Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
I'm doing very well, Sarah, but now I'm already kicking myself for reminding you about something.
Yeah, you reminded me that well, you didn't remind me because in the back of my mind, I knew it was coming out, but I didn't realize that it dropped like at 5:30 my time. So I did my homework because when I saw your DM, I was worried that I would have another Lord of the Rings incident happen where you force me to watch it during the pre-show and it's just awkward silence.
Yeah.
So I quickly watched it, which nobody needs to watch that trailer because it's literally 60% of it you've already seen it in other trailers, and the extra maybe 40, maybe 30, it's really bad dialogue and just a lot of action fight sequences. Now you'll ask, well, it's a superhero movie, Sarah, so of course there's going to be large set pieces and big action scenes, so if that's what they're showing. But it worries me when majority of the trailers focused on that and not on the actual character moments, because are they trying to like mask it? I don't know. And it still gives me Morbius trailer vibes.
Yeah, I did watch it, and I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, I was like, at first, I was like, wait a minute, I saw this in the teaser, and I saw this in the mini trailer, and then it, and like as you said, the new shots. I mean, we do get better shots of the JSA.
Yes. So or the Amanda Waller JSA.
Exactly. So, of course, we learned about Amanda being in the film at Comic-Con, and so for folks whoever missed that news, now Amanda Waller is in there, and I guess it's, again, it ties it into the larger DCEU, and so we have that.
It does, but I think putting her in the show makes people curious about the background of, okay, why is she assembling this team of heroes? We thought she was only working with bad guys. And then the immediate next thought is, where the hell is Peacemaker?
Yeah.
Where is the man Peacemaker? Because John Cena versus The Rock as superheroes, that would be iconic.
That'll be Black Adam too.
Oh my God.
That'll happen before Black Adam and Shazam go up against each other. That would be an epic film. We need to tweet to James Gunn right now and say, James, we have a story pitch for you.
Man, if it was Marvel and the way they're doing She-Hulk right now, it would be such a good end credit scene to just have the show. Because honestly, as much as I love Peacemaker, I don't think he would stand a shot next to Black Adam. But yeah, it's just my other takeaway is man, they really want us to believe that The Rock is an evil person.
Yeah.
But that's all he ever says. And then he fights back against people who are attacking him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's really evil.
Yeah. And I know that's the big hurdle we've talked about before that he's just going to have to overcome. And so, but it dropped, and it is locked in for October, so it really is happening.
Yeah, speaking about things that are happening that I kind of forget about, but I'm like, oh yeah, that is coming back. Cobra Kai season 5 will drop tomorrow, and Will and I are very much on the fence about this show, considering how season 4 played out.
Yeah.
And with all the content, you likely will get a season review from us at a later time when some of our, let's face it, guys, I'm on this Game of Thrones kick.
And I am firmly riding shotgun with you on that one.
It's so good that we want to use our time talking about things we really enjoy, but we'll get to Cobra Kai. Just, I wouldn't expect it anytime in the near future with everything coming out and currently on TV right now.
Yeah.
What else happened? Oh, speaking of going back to DC, I laughed so hard when I read about this because I was like, Will, when are you going to listen to me about these things? Because a few weeks ago, I gave you a very hard time for this exact headline about this Dan Lin accepting a position with Warner Brothers and DC, and he's going to be the new Kevin Feige. Guess what? The guy is smart. He's like, oh, hell no. You guys have a train wreck. I can't steer this ship. Like, it's off the rails, and like the train is gone. The train is gone. Yeah. So he declined, and the DC universe is still a mess. But you know, we got Joker 2 to look forward to. I hear it's going to be a musical, lovely, about love and stuff, and then Love and Crazy, and then we got Batman 2. Whenever they haven't announced Batman 2, right?
Right. They announced They announced that Matt Reeves is signed to do the film, and Pattinson's on board. But beyond that, there's really not much more beyond that at this point.
Interesting. We'll see. The other news is we got DC 23 coming this weekend. It's going to be a lot of news. Hopefully more information about the next phases of the MCU. Yep. And then, so did this already happen, Will, or like Star Trek Day?
Yeah, so the day is Star Trek Day.
Happy Star Trek Day!
Thank you. Yeah, the event has already happened. They had several big things. First, Star Trek Picard Season 3, which will have the cast of the Next Generation returning, will premiere on February 16th. They also dropped a trailer today as part of the event. The Jerry Ryan, Patrick Stewart, and Michelle Hurd were part of a panel. And the trailer looked really good. They had Riker ship, which is the USS Titan, is going to be very prominent in the series. So we got that. And we also got a couple release dates for one of the animated shows, Star Trek Prodigy. It'll be its second season, and it's coming October 27th. Of course, Lower Decks with Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome is going on right now, and for Star Trek fans, if you haven't checked out Lower Decks, I strongly recommend it. It is so funny, and you get rewarded for your obsessive fandom. I will say that, but. And then also Strange New Worlds also had a cast announcement. Carol Kane is going to be replacing the actor who played the chief engineer. So she will be the new chief engineer in season 2. No release date yet for that, but they did also have a little teaser for one of the cast members today going on an away mission. So, so it was a good Star Trek day for sure.
In the final frontier.
Yep.
There's a lot of days. I mean, there's Star Wars Day. There is not technically an MCU day.
Not yet.
I appreciate the not yet. Granted, I always feel like we get a movie. If there was a day, man, I bet. Too bad May 4th is Star Trek Day.
Yeah.
Because that early May, we always get an MCU movie. 2020 happened, but yeah, we usually get an MCU movie. So maybe one day soon.
Yeah, maybe, I would think if you were going to do an MCU day, I would argue you would have to have it on the release date of Iron Man.
Yeah, that is fair point. Which wasn't that like May 6th or something?
Actually, you know what? Speaking of May, it was May 2, 2008.
Yep.
So there you go. So you're right on the money as always.
I knew it was 2008. I knew it was May. I also know that I did not see that movie in theaters. I was not the same person back then. That was a very long time ago for me. But in other DC, like I like how today it's one headline and then a DC headline and then another. Usually I'm good about grouping, but today I'm just like, DC will get its time, but I can only do so much at once.
Yeah.
So back to the headline, Michael Bishop will be replacing Jordan Ellis as Jonathan Kent on Superman and Lois. Do we know Michael Bishop from anything?
No.
Okay.
No, I think I did read in the Deadline article, as I was prepping this evening, that he led a show on Disney Plus, but I'm blanking on the title of it right now. But beyond that, I think he's Australian, and he looks a lot like the kid who plays Jordan on the show.
That is exactly what I thought when I saw the photo. I was like, that makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense. I mean, so far, in terms of casting on that show, they've done pretty, I can't think of a time when I'm like, oh my God, that actor drove me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of other shows on this, especially the CW, where that happens. But, so it's sad that they had to find a replacement, especially for such a critical character. But I have some pretty good faith that they made a good decision. So
yeah.
We will see. And before we get into our main topics, we do want to just make a note that Queen Elizabeth II has passed away today, and she lived for until she was 96.
Yeah. Personally,
I thought she was much older.
Yeah, well, I mean, she was the longest reigning English monarch, 70 years. Just celebrated her 70th Jubilee, and just literally let's help seat the new prime minister like just a day or so ago. I mean, and then this, so it's obviously we are big fans of the show The Crown, and of course all the royalty and things we've talking about with thrones and stuff.
Right.
This truly is an end of an era when you think about it, not only from historical perspective, but also just from entertainment perspective, because there's been so many, like we said, The Crown, and so many movies made about her and her life as well. So,
it's the Queen, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the movie with
Helen Mirren, I think.
Helen Mirren.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because earlier this week I remember seeing some headlines that for the 6th season, I think, they've casted William and Kate.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately was thinking to myself, man, when are we going to get season 5 of The Crown? I missed that show.
Yeah. I missed that show too. Yeah. Yeah, I missed that show, and they did pause production day in honor of her memory. So, well,
as they should. I mean, I was listening to a meeting at work all day, a big board meeting, and during it, this news came up, and they took a pause too. So, I mean, we're American, but still, it's like you said, her legacy surpasses just like a national thing. So, okay. Well, you know what? Usually we like to save the best for last, but no, I need to talk about this episode of House of Dragon.
Okay.
Oh my God. I love this episode so much. I've been thinking about it ever since I saw it. There are certain scenes that I keep reminiscing about because first of all, they bookended it with 2 major action sequences with dragons and everything. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that last week, about how you introduce these fantasy elements at the beginning and the end, but the whole political side of it allows you to almost forget, like, no, you're in a fantasy world. You're not in the real world.
Yeah.
And so this episode, I've never seen so much duality in terms of a king versus a dad. And I found it so interesting and compelling to watch, because Patty is just like, he's surpassed Matt Smith for me. I know everybody is like on the Matt Smith train because he's got the Targaryen look, and that, like, he says very little in this episode, and I love his eye acting. However, Patty was just so good at, you can see the turmoil going on, and just how he interacts with everyone, and you don't really know which side of Viserys you're going to get. Are you going to get I was just appointed this position, I don't really like, I'm going to die soon, like that? I don't know, like, not the strong king? Or are you going to get the king who's like, off with your head? Out of my sight.
or the drunk king. I mean, yeah.
The drunk king. And one shot that I keep thinking about is how they had him in this time of celebration for his son, his 2-year-old son. They had him isolated, because he had to sit in his, well, kind of throne.
Yeah.
But there was a distance. Like, even Alicent was sitting among the people. He was isolated. And I think at one time they did a shot from behind him, so you could see his perspective. Yeah. And you could also hear his perspective, because you could hear audibly that he's listening and observing the laughter and these people coming together and eating a meal together. But he's removed from it. Like, this is a king's celebration, but the king isn't necessarily a part. The king is an observer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to,
I love that imagery so much.
Yeah. That was one of many images that stuck out with me in the episode, and I remember watching it real time, that perspective, and so much about the king, and yes, this is Aegon, his son, born. They're having this celebration, and you're right. I mean, the perspective of him being distant from everyone, and then his emotion that he's having, and you're right, the duality that they have of being a father and a king, I know we talked about this before, but how he ended up being the king when Jacaerys died, and basically, well, he's, in some regards, he is the accidental king, because all the other of Jacaerys' kids had passed on, and he couldn't give it to his cousin because obviously she's a woman,
right?
And he just sort of fell into this position, and so and you're right. I know before we started recording, I was definitely on that Matt Smith train of admiration. But I think the thing that is so genius about Patty, and why you have 3 compelling characters that lead the show with Rhaenyra, Daemon, and Viserys, is how Patty plays Viserys. It could easily go into parody,
right?
Or weakness, or because you're having a person who is a ineffective king. I mean, I think about the boar hunt, and it was the symbolism of how he was trying to, try to find the white boar for one because of the symbolism, but two, whenever they did find the brown boar, and then the Lannister, from the staff that he gave them to spirit a thing, how ineffectual and how ineffective he was.
Well, he's dying. Like
he knows
it. He knows. I just keep thinking about the line, "I'm not going to be around forever." And so there's, in this time of happiness, like he finally has his male heir that he's always wanted. But at the same time, he knows that he is deteriorating. The crown is literally killing him.
Yeah.
The throne, I mean.
Yeah.
And he now has a child who, when he dies, will be orphaned. And he has put her up in the succession, but if she doesn't make some smart political moves, then she might not last too long. And so there's worry and fear there. And then at the same time, he has all of these other people around him telling him, "Hey, marry my son. Hey, have her marry your own son," which honestly, gross. But at the same time, genius.
Yeah.
And Targaryens used to do stuff like that. So from what I understand, so I wouldn't be surprised. But I that's what also captivated me, is that there was so much in him, just grief and this idea that I'm starting to have this family that I wanted, but I'm not going to be around to enjoy it much longer. I think there was a realization like that he can't protect Rhaenyra forever.
Right.
I love the scene between him and Alicent in front of the fire. Because I know people have speculated about the timeline. For me, I thought it was 3 years.
It is 3 years.
Yeah, thank you. A reviewer I was listening to was saying 2, and I'm like, the kid just turned 2.
Exactly. So do your math, people. 3 years ago, 9 months.
It's about to pop with the kid number 2. So
exactly. Yeah.
I think, but that scene by the fire, I wasn't expecting him to have so much remorse over his desire to have a male heir at all costs, and how 3 years, 3+ years, he is still mourning the loss of his own wife.
Yeah. That was another thing too that I think gets lost in all the drama and in the palace intrigue and politics. Is you're right. Viserys is still mourning the loss of his first wife. He basically marries Alicent not out of love, but out of duty. And I know we had the very icky moment last week with, it was sort of like the lesser of two icky things. Either marry an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old. And so he does it because at the end of the day, he's got to produce heirs. And because if anything happens to Rhaenyra, then then the whole lineage and everything could I don't know what the line is, in that universe, as far as how would they deal with it? I guess because Daemon doesn't have any kids.
Could potentially get it. It just is a lot of.
Well, I guess that's the thing. Yeah, I guess it would go to Daemon, but the Privy Council doesn't want that. Yeah. Turmoil and uncertainty would occur. But I want to go back to what you just said about him marrying Alicent out of duty, because in this episode they make a point where he knew he had to remarry.
And yes, lesser of two evils. At the same time, though, he and the smartest guy in the room, I don't know his name, but the guy who keeps pushing, you gotta intermingle with the sea monsters.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Yeah.
But like he I feel like he didn't choose out of love, but he did choose out of affection.
Yeah.
And he could have waited a little bit longer, I guess. So that's what they brought up in this episode, because a lot of it had to do with Rhaenyra, you got to remarry. He even, foolish Viserys, he even tries to set her up with Jason Lannister. And I laughed at this because I swear to God that during the opening credits, I was thinking to myself, man, when are we going to see a Lannister pop up? I had no idea. I don't watch the previews for the next episode. I had no idea this was coming. No one spoiled it for me. And then I hear the name Jason Lannister, and I'm like, there you are.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are more evil people to come in your family, because he was just annoying at the moment. I don't know. But Lannisters are definitely lurking around, doing their thing.
Yeah, this guy though. Jason. You know, his supreme confidence in himself was just oozing off the screen, because not only does he get like shot down by Rhaenyra, but then after that he still goes up to the king and he just like equally shoots him down again, and it's like, all right, at least the brother was like had sense enough to like say, you know, maybe come up with a different plan as far as this succession. Yeah.
Definitely. You need to go about this a different way.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of that, with the king shooting him down, and I love, you know, like you were saying earlier about, you know, which Viserys you're going to get, because in that moment of joy and stuff, and him wanting Rhaenyra to be a part of it, I think of two things between Viserys and Rhaenyra. One, on the carriage ride out to the celebration,
right?
And you know, him trying to continue to be that the father of trying to bond with her, and as a father, but also reminding her again of her duty as the heir apparent of getting married and producing heirs to keep the lineage going. And so, you know, so I think about that, and just her, you know, how whenever Rhaenyra looks over to the two of them, and of the king and Alicent, and, you know, thinking back to the second episode when Viserys makes the decision to pick Alicent, and just the look that she gave Alicent then, as far as like, you know, I think multiple levels. I mean, some people have interpreted it like, you're my best friend, you're my confidant, I'm losing that person. Some people, and I think even the actresses, I think I heard somewhere, were saying that they did play the scene in a flirtatious way because Rhaenyra loves her. So you could take it either way, but it works no matter how you slice it.
Right.
And then they carry it forward in that scene 3 years later. So so again, it just makes for like what's going to happen next kind of thing, which has a problem with something that we were talking about later, but for another show. But the other scene was when he snaps at the party, like, where is Rhaenyra? And I loved how they cut over to the two of them, to her at the tree, and Alicent shows up, and you know, the very comedic scene. I did laugh out loud a bit with the guy playing the song and stuff, but it really illustrated the gulf between them now. because she's princess, she's queen. That bond that they had before, it truly is. Because of the politics and because of the circumstances, their bond is forever gone and changed because of this.
Yeah, I think that they could have done a different route with it, which I think is why these moments stand out, is where, oh, she's now your stepmom. Your best friend is now your stepmom.
Yeah.
Very bizarre.
Yeah.
But no, it's more of a conversation of, are you asking me to do this because you're my queen? Okay, I'll do it. And we've talked about this before also in terms of the show and the Targaryens and how they are a very close family. But they are also a royal family, and duty always is placed above. And so both Rhaenyra and her father do this throughout this episode, where there are moments when they play the card, like, I'm the heir apparent, I'm your daughter, I'm king, I'm your father. Like they play that clash of child and parent, but through this different dance of more like, are you talking to me as family, or are you talking to me as like my king, which are very different conversations. And so I found that to be very interesting. And what you're getting at is this evolution of this argument, where looking back on it, you start with the carriage ride scene where you bring up the need for her to remarry, and so Viserys makes this plea like very softly and gentle, and then they get to the big feast and the party, and she snaps when she finds out, oh, you're trying to set me up with Jason Lannister. Hell no. Good on her. Good read of people. And they had that big public fight, and then she runs off, and then at the end they're back, and then they have such a good like argument with some really harsh truths on both sides. And there's just this natural progression of this fight that is intermittently played throughout the entire episode, because the writers wanted to have this conflict, but they didn't want to waste it all in like one scene, or they wanted to make sure it was stretched out for the whole episode without making it tiresome. And so that's why, honestly, Viserys and Rhaenyra spend a lot of the time apart. And I think that's purposeful, so that they can both gain that other perspective about what the other is really getting at. And I love the final scene where he really does go full father mode, and is like, wake up, you're not being replaced. Which, this is another thing why I love Patty's performance. I honestly believed that Viserys never considered that she would be thinking of him as like, I got this intent, like it was a surprise when he heard her say, you don't need me anymore. Like there was something very much about his performance, like I bought that Viserys would like never consider that. if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense, because I mean that is consistent with what we've seen of this character to date, as far as his lack of foresight and I guess emotional intelligence as far as reading the room. Yeah, I mean, he never did consider it, and so I think that's what makes this. That's what's so fascinating about this show, is that you really can't, depending on the moment, you can go from like feeling like this character is a bad guy, good guy, and feeling sympathy for them, detesting them. I mean, it's just they just play on so many different levels of emotions that it really does become like as a viewer, it keeps you engaged because you just really don't know what's going to come next. I mean, you think you might, but then the writers will take it in a different place where you were like anticipating where it was going to go.
Yeah, I mean, because of certain events in Game of Thrones, I was like, "Oh, is Patty going to go this episode?"
Yeah.
Viserys going to go this episode? They didn't do that. I hate the writers for this because I don't want to like Viserys. I don't want to really love his relationship with Rhaenyra, Alicent, or even the council, or even Daemon. Yeah. But I do, and I know this character is not going to last.
Right.
It's going to go, and it's stupid, and I hate it. But hats off to you for 3 episodes, and I'm like, man, what am I going to do without Viserys around? But on that note, and speaking about like uncertainties of characters, I do know, and I was telling myself this, Sarah, they're not going to do that, but still, I thought, especially during the end, I was like, oh, they're going to kill Daemon. They played the timing of that sequence. They went out. They didn't go on too long, and they didn't go on too short. They played it, and he played it perfectly to where you're like, okay, this is a lot. What is happening? And then, of course, the last minute. But I really like it. I really liked how this battle and this war is so much in the background of everything happening at the forefront of this show. And how we are introduced to Daemon as being the strong fighter and everything, and yet he goes on, he agrees to lead this war, and he hasn't managed a victory in 3 years. And his brother is like, hey, I'll finally help. Which makes him even more upset and willing to be like, okay, fuck it. If there's someone to come to help me, yes, I will play bait. They can kill me. I don't care anymore. It's been 3 years. I'm done. But yeah, I really enjoy those scenes, and Will, this is your first taste of a Game of Thrones battle scene. What did you think?
Oh, I was blown away from like you said, it was perfect bookends the way they did this episode from the beginning with the battles and the crab guy was like torturing the one person, and he's like, my Daemon will save me, and then of course he does save him by to seeing his dragon come in and just barbecue everyone. But that scene spoke volumes in so many ways beyond just the spectacle of it. But because when Daemon did come in and this poor little ship captain was like thinking he was going to get rescued, he just just smashes it, has no regard for its foot soldiers, and I think it really displays one of the reasons why the men with Daemon and the sea monster, why they're so dispirited and how reckless they are in carrying out the campaign. I mean, it's just so you have that, and you're right. I mean, they did tease it when fast forward to the end where he finally, when Viserys was finally convinced, okay, for the good of King's Landing, for the good of Westeros, we need to help Daemon out. And then so they send the courier, and the poor courier, he's just trying to deliver a message, and we talked about it earlier, Matt Smith's eye acting, because did he utter a single word this episode? I don't think he did.
Nope, he did not utter a single word.
Yeah, it was just all body language and eye acting, and just that look that he had on his face, and when they panned up to his face when he was reading that scroll, and it was all the humiliation, the gall that he was like, the gall of Viserys after 3 years of us trying to do this, and now you're like showing up, and the pride that Daemon has in his ego, and he just takes it all out on that poor courier. And I was like, the guy's just a messenger.
Yeah,
I felt so bad for him. And then he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to, and that just spurred him into this action. But again, it was kind of a microcosm of like how reckless he has been, and we've seen this like in the last few episodes too, like when he took the egg, dragon's egg. He thinks with the moment, but doesn't. But in many ways, like Viserys doesn't, he acts on A, but doesn't take the steps of B to C and D, what's going to happen because of my actions. And so he just runs out there, crosses the channel, and then you're right. They played that scene perfectly as far as time and as far as the surrender.
Right.
And really did, even when the arrows were coming from the people, from the crab guys' troops on high, it was kind of iffy there for a minute, because with this show, all bets are off. I mean,
I love the aerial shots.
Yeah,
the aerial shots of the swarm of people just coming at Daemon, and also confusion, because at one point I'm like, oh wait, is that his troops? Oh wait, huh? Yeah, like confusion. It's just, again, this is fantasy. There's about to be a dragon in to come and save the day. Yep. Although the creature doesn't like say, oh, you're on my side, so I'll shoot over here. Yep. Dragons continue to be the best weapon in war, as long as you're willing to kill your own people.
Yeah.
And I like what you said. Like, it's definitely showing how Targaryen rule, there's a lot of recklessness in it. Patty and not Patty, but Viserys and Daemon both demonstrate different sides of reckless behavior, but it's very similar. And that's my final note, is that these characters, this family of Targaryens that we've been introduced to, it amazes me how they're all different, but they've definitely shown us moments of the similarities of those shared traits that each one of them has in common with each other, which makes them turning on each other even more heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've spent so much time on House of Dragon,
I guess folks kind of know where we stand on do we? The Rings of Power.
So, okay, the Rings of Power. We watched it. I tried, and I was telling myself, okay, it's because I'm biased. I kind of didn't want to watch this. I think I made that clear, actually, that I was not anti it. It's just, I knew, especially with Game of Thrones going on, I knew going into it what would bother me and what I would find lacking. And when I sat down and watched it, I checked out so many freaking times in the first episode, because it opens with a monologue that never ended for me. It was like 20 minutes, and I swear it was deja vu, because I feel like it's the same monologue. I know it's different, but it felt very similar to the opening monologue of Fellowship. Yeah. And there was a lot of jargon that I'm unfamiliar with, and a lot of people, and it's beautiful. It's a very well made show.
Yeah, yeah.
Well written, I would disagree. I
Yeah.
was bored. I don't find these characters compelling. And again, there is so much lore in it. I could not keep track because they were jumping around to a lot of different places. And I don't really like Gladriel. There's something about her where she's. Oh, go ahead, Will.
Yeah, let me ask you. So, because I know this has been a lot of the discussions out there about Gladriel, and I'm not going to give the Mary Sue bullshit, because that's just it's not that, but more because I think, let's just call it for what it is. It's a bunch of bullshit.
Right.
But is it because you're used to? And I'm just asking a question. Is it because of the version that we see in the Third Age that you're used to as far as Gladriel, that? Or is it that, or is it something else?
So no, it's not the Third Age, because honestly, Gladriel was not one of my favorite characters coming out of watching the film series.
Okay.
I'm much more of a Merry and Pippin person. So
okay.
Yeah, or I mean. I really liked the movies when I watched them. Have I returned to them recently? No.
Yeah,
No.
I haven't either.
But I do overall. I like the ensemble. I liked Aragon. I like the Liv Tyler's character. But Gladriel I didn't really like, and why she irritated me here is because she's this fierce warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And her motivation is revenge.
Mm.
And it's revenge. It's told to us that it's revenge, not because we're invested in her relationship with her brother. We see literally one scene with him. Yep. And then next thing we know, he's dead. Yep. And she feels like she has to kill Sauron because her brother died. Mm-hmm. Newsflash, a lot of people's brothers died in this war. Sauron, I'm pretty sure killed more than one person. And so there's this bit of selfishness that I don't really find interesting. And hey, I'll call a spade a spade. It's really hard to view her with that motivation as interesting and being a strong, fierce warrior when I have Rhaenyra Targaryen.
Yeah.
Who's a boss-ass bitch who took a dragon and told her uncle to kill her, and he didn't.
Yeah.
So,
So I agree with you. It's beautifully shot. I mean, you can't deny that. I mean, it was, but for me, and I know we talked about this with the trailers, and it has carried forward in the series. What's the point?
Thank you.
I mean, I'm not being mean. I'm just trying to, if you're going to, and I know, I mean, I will freely admit, I read Lord of the Rings. I enjoyed the films. I'm not I know that they weren't able, this is not a adaptation of the Silmarillion. I think it's because of rights issues, because of, Amazon was only able to basically purchase the rights to the appendices and the Hobbit and I think the books, but not the Silmarillion. So I know part of the things that they're having to do here is basically take elements from take familiar characters like Gladriel and Elrond, and maybe Gandalf, or maybe Sauron, depends on who the guy in the comic was. But I just, the thing that really, like you said, that really got that, this kind of like this, the first episode, I was just, I couldn't, it did not grab me as a viewer, because they were just trying to introduce so much. I mean, you spend $250 million to get the rights to this thing. You're spending $1 billion to produce this thing, and you're going. I believe there's 8 episodes this season, and I think they have maybe five season commitment. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I know it's they already, I think, have, they invested a lot for this.
Right. Yeah, they did.
Pacing, pacing was, it would have served this story better, to your point. Like, for example, focus on introducing these characters over the course of the first 2 or 3 episodes. Mm-hmm. Don't try to shove 1,000 years worth of history into an hour and 7 minutes.
All right.
Because it's just, they were jumping from this part of Middle Earth to the next part of Middle Earth to this. I mean, I just sort of like, it was almost one of those things when I was watching it, I was like, you know what? We're just going to blow you all away with the beautiful visions and stuff. Story be damned. We're just gonna like just throw eye candy at you, and don't worry about plot and stuff. I will say in the second episode there were some more moments, like for example when Elrond and went to visit the dwarf.
Yes.
Those, I was like, okay, now I'm starting to, those were those moments, because we had true character, we had interaction, and we had like, a very good moment of like you haven't seen me in 20 years.
Right.
For me as a dwarf, that's a life. That's a lot of time for an elf who's immortal. That's nothing for you, but for me, that's a big effing deal. And so I wanted more of that, because I mean, I'm not trying to compare and contrast Rings of Power and House of the Dragon, but like with any story, the thing that why we spent so much time on House of Dragon was because they have, in the same amount of episodes, they really focused in on one family and really fleshed out these relationships and stuff to give us buy-in with these people and their motivations and things that are going on. And with all these and Rings of Power, I just feel like it was just like, we're just going to drop you here and drop you here and drop you here and drop you here, and not give us any. There's a lot of exposition, but no emotion.
Exposition.
But no emotion.
Yeah, there was a lack of emotion. True conflict, I would even say. Lack of like. And I think maybe that's why Elrond and the Dwarf Prince really stood out, is because not having your friend, like you be best buddies, and then them just fall off the side of the earth.
Yeah.
You get ghosted. Like if they come back wanting your help, you're like, what?
What? Yeah.
That's a real emotion for these characters who are fantasy. So. Yeah. I think there was not enough of that in the other stories that were occurring. And that's really why I think a lot of the characters fall flat, as much as the scenery and the images stick out and are very well crafted. And I'm sorry, if we're talking these two shows at the same time, they're going to be compared against you, because why the hell would you come out with both of these shows at the same time and not expect comparison? They are eerily similar.
They are.
I mean, House of Dragon even opened up with technically a monologue and a flashback to a time before when Viserys got appointed king. And they did that because they're like, the past will, this issue will rise again within 10 years. And I think that was what the Lord of the Rings wanted to do with that opening monologue, where Sauron is in power and now he's disappeared. I guess maybe it's not that they wanted to do that. They should have done something like that where it was like, hey, you remember this movie about this ring?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this show is going to be about how the rings came to be and what that like. I know that's what people expected, but I guess they could have just done something a little bit more interesting to set up how Sauron continues in Middle Earth to rise to power, quickly disappear,
Mm-hmm.
but then come back.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, because like the new and original character that they introduced, the kid Toby,
mm-hmm.
and showing like the orcs and that crazy sword that has the sigil.
Right.
You know that there's I guess that's the thing that's so frustrating for me about this series, because there's so many like wonderful elements sprinkled all throughout, but it's like they didn't give me a reason to root for anyone.
Yeah.
Even this because I think that's the thing. Even as conflicted as the people in House of the Dragon are, I feel like I'm rooting for Rhaenyra. 1 week I'm rooting for Daemon. I'm rooting for Viserys. I'm just rooting. I just feel like I'm invested.
Yeah.
But with these characters, I just didn't get that. And I always, I try not to never judge a show off the first episode, because, I mean,
good thing we had two.
Yeah. and we had the second one, and they did a little bit better, but it was still, I'm like, you only have 8 episodes this first season, and y'all got to get moving on it, because I know you had.
It was a bad sign the moment you messaged me. This is like watching paint dry. I was like, okay. It's not because I was biased. If Will doesn't like it and can't defend it,
I was trying. Yeah, like I said, I was like, it's visually stunning, and as and as we were talking before, I think I also messaged you that I think I compared it like Sandman. Very similarity to especially seeing sort of the reactions that are out there. If you are steeped in the lore of Tolkien and you're a huge Tolkien fan, this is your show.
Right.
If you're someone like me who I enjoyed that that world and that universe, but I'm not. I will freely admit I'm not like steeped in the lore like many of the fans out there.
Casual.
I'm casual viewer. Yeah. It didn't blow me away, and I was really wanting this show to blow me away, and it didn't. And maybe that's a fault of me of having such high expectations, but I was worried, and we said that, and I'll say it. I said it earlier tonight. We said it before, but we both were wondering what is the point from the trailers, and they didn't deliver, and I was being I was a good faith watcher trying to watch this. I just couldn't. I'm like, what's the point? And I think you're right. If they had tied it to the future, to set up to help casual viewer understand where we're going with this, then I think it would have made the viewing experience for these first 2 episodes a whole heck of a lot better.
Yeah. I honestly don't know what would have made it better. Because I'm such a casual viewer of this all, but we watched it. We'll continue to watch it unless it puts me to sleep next time.
Yep.
And on that note, we do have to at least spend 5 minutes on She-Hulk, or should I say, Wongers and Madison show.
Yeah.
Wongers and Madison.
Yeah, 2 N's with a Y, and not where you think it goes.
Like, this episode was hilarious.
Yeah.
I really liked this episode.
I did too.
It was exactly what I needed. And I love like I really enjoyed how this is She-Hulk.
Mhm.
And so the episode really should focus on her. And she was a big part of this episode. But honestly, it was fascinating how Wong was there, but he didn't steal the show. But it was just like this good balance of like furthering Jennifer and She-Hulk storyline, but also like, hey, yes, this is a show, but we're in the MCU, so we can play with other characters. And the fact that Wong watches This Is Us, love it, and The Sopranos, and probably a few other shows. Like I'm sure he's watching. Him and Madison are watching House of Dragon, which if Madison doesn't appear in like phase 5 or 6, like with Wong, I will be deeply upset.
Me too.
People are writing fan fiction right now about them. So good on you. Overall, I think I really like this episode. They spiked they picked up more comedy, and also they the breaking of the fourth wall.
Yeah,
I noticed an increase in it.
Right out the gate.
Literally right off the gate. But it was, and then they ended with it, and I think there was even a scene in the middle with it. But I noticed it a lot more in this episode than any of the episodes before, and I'm trying to figure out, is that what made it more comedic? More like, oh, we're 4 episodes in, this is She-Hulk, this is what the show is, got it. And so they wanted to ease us into that being a part of the show. But overall, I liked it. I liked how I kind of feel it was a good way to end almost the first act.
Yeah.
Because now we're going to get into this whole legal battle over the She-Hulk trademark, which brings up the villain, Titania. And which almost feels like, okay, now we're getting into Act 2. But what were your thoughts? So I second everything you said there. The legal part for me is like, I was laughing with the cease and desist, and like the lawyer in me, whenever she was talking with Wong during his consultation about about the mystic arts law versus the American law, and those moments for me is like, I was like, this is a show for me. This is like, y'all speaking my language. But it is the legal procedural comedy really, it works in this show. And as I was watching the episode this evening, I was thinking, I was like, this is what phase 4, this is what the MCU actually needed. As far as change of pace. Things we're seeing here will probably have some import in the larger story, but not everything has to be like universe ending stakes. I mean, sometimes it's just good to have fun, and this is a thing I like about this show is it is, again, as I said it before, I say it again, it knows what it is. It's comfortable in its skin and being a different show, being a comedy in the MCU. The jokes don't feel forced. And I think you're right. I mean, maybe the fourth wall breaking did help the jokes things to flow a lot easier this week than maybe some of the other ones that and it's not like a knee slap. They're funny jokes. Some of them aren't meant to be like knee slappers. I mean, some are just very like subtle humor that and others like with Wong and Madison. She's like the friend who spoils things when who hasn't watched the show. And then I mean, I just love their moments whenever he was like, she starts spoiling things that happen in The Sopranos, and he was like, "Oh, I have Benedict Wong, when the expression he had on his face, like, damn it, you just spoiled the show for me." I mean, that's just, it's like we've all been there. And so I think that's the thing that worked well.
And then last, the setting up ending Act 1 of the season, because this was, I guess, it was the mid-season break. Setting up the next phase, and now we see how they're going to introduce Matt Murdock into this show with the lawsuit.
Yeah. I didn't even think. See, I was so like fixated on Game of Thrones talk right now that I forgot about Daredevil.
Yeah. But I wrote down as soon as she got served those papers, she's like, I know a process server when I see one, and it's all the thing. I was like, this is how they're going to integrate Daredevil into the show. This is how he's going to get into the story, because we kind of joked it'll be episode 4 or 5 last week, and this is how, because I mean he's a lawyer, and she's definitely not going to represent herself, because if you represent yourself, a lawyer represents himself as a fool for a client. So this is how you do it.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, I'm kind of mad because when you predict things like that makes a lot of sense. They're usually right. And so I feel like you spoiled the next part for me.
Sorry.
But I'm also kind of proud because I'm like, good on you, Will. Way to be paying attention and not so fixated on one show this week. But yeah, I think on that spoiler note, that reminder, Daredevil is going to appear on this, and probably, I don't know, like I'm happy to see She-Hulk has not. It's going uphill. We've watched a lot of Disney Plus, MCU Disney Plus shows, and we've had some highs, lows, and slow starts and all of that. But I feel like She-Hulk, it's been a nice incline.
Yeah.
But we'll see, as Will always says, if they can stick the landing. And on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk on Twitter, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. And visit our website, www.cnnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.